It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions. Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Thursday? We do. From the Dixieline Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to our Thursday podcast as we get ready to kick off a great sports weekend. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, John Riley. It's all his fault. He invented this podcast. You don't like it? Blame him. We welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines. This podcast is brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores in San Diego. If you've got projects, they have materials. If you want ideas, they can be your best friend. They can be your consultant. Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers. John Riley, good afternoon. Man, is it hot outside, 102 degrees. I can't bloody believe this weather's been going like this since July 4th week. But it's baseball pennant race time, but it's NFL preseason time. But we got a lot of stories to talk about. We're going lots of different directions on the Thursday podcast. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, this is the dog days of summer, man. But you're right. NFL is getting going, but it's hot out there. Did you see the report on the Olympics talking about some of these cities that it's going to be too hot for the Olympics in the summer games? So it's nuts.
Yeah. Hey, we got a lot of things to cover. Business items first. You're on social media. I know you're on social media. I see you on social media. I want you to join my team on social media. X marks the spot. I want you to follow everything I put on X and on Twitter. Hey, my handle, at Hacksaw1090. At Hacksaw1090. Punch that up, hit follow. Want you to join my Twitter All-Star team. When we are done with this podcast, you're taking over this podcast. He invented it. We call it Fans Forum. John, describe it.
All right, so you got a question in the world of sports for Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. This is your chance to get involved, to co-host the podcast. Just type in your question or comment in the live chat on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, Facebook X or YouTube, and we'll get you involved in Fans Forum.
And by the way, feel free to jump on John on Fans Forum. You got a take on his take, which sometimes is out in left field where it's 102 degrees in the sun right now. You are allowed to jump on John, including taking a hit on Hacksaw. A couple of other items. If you like sports, want you to check my website. I write on it every morning. I guarantee you wake up in the morning, first cup of coffee, you read what I write, you'll know everything there is in the world of sports. And when you go to my website, leehacksawhamilton.com, there's a big orange box right on the homepage. Fill it out. Join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. We also want you to share, tell everybody what we do Mondays and Thursdays, and we want you to subscribe. Therefore, you will get all the alerts, ding, 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 because we put a lot of stuff up on the YouTube channel all different days of the week. So we got a lot of business to get to. John, let's start with baseball.
The Padres are unbelievable. You talk about it's hot outside. The Padres are really hot.
Padres equal weather. Weather equals red hot. How about this Padre team? Now, I got a problem with the national media because I don't think very many people are paying very much attention to the Padres. I see all these things written about Aaron Judge and Yankee baseball and the Dodgers return to health, and look at what Arizona's doing. I swear to you, John, nobody is paying much attention to Padre baseball, which kind of blows my mind. The Padres have won 19 of their last 22. Haven't done that hardly ever in franchise history. But now today's a travel day going to Colorado. Tomorrow they play 18 games in 18 days. Now, granted, they start this haul against the Rockies. Granted, this 19-3 stretch for the most part has been against woebegone Colorado, threadbare Miami, and a Pittsburgh team that has caved in. The Padres are 23-4 since June against bad teams in baseball.
Hey.
So that's why they're in the race at this point in time. But I know you'll yell at me, so I'll yell at myself. Lee, it doesn't mean anything. You got to play who you're playing that day. You just got to keep winning. They're going to play some tougher people going forward. Obviously, when they come off this short series in Colorado, they come back home and they get a Twins team that's pretty good. And they got a Mets team that's feeling much better about itself. But this 19 wins in 22 games is just spectacular. I'll tell you what, they're monitoring the innings of Matt Waldron and Michael King because they have both gone over the limit they've ever pitched before. So they let King stay in there yesterday, pitched pretty efficiently, bunch more strikeouts. He's not laboring. He's not having stressful innings. They'll keep an eye on Waldron, though he's stalled a little bit. His record is now 7-9 as they go to Colorado. Take a deep breath. First outing, Joe Musgrove, thumbs up. He kept telling everybody, I have changed my motion. He looked totally different to me. A much more compact stride to the plate, less stress on the shoulder, more power from the legs. If you watch any video of Musgrove, you will see that when he comes set, his body, his contour, his delivery with the glove, it's all to the lower part of the body.
Mm-hmm.
He repeated it. I thought he pitched really well first innings off the disabled list. And there's been a Yu Darvish sighting. He is back in San Diego working on his own. Padres are not involved in his workouts, although I think they're giving him opportunities if he wishes to throw at Petco Park, maybe in the tunnels or in the bullpen, or at Point Loma Nazarene, where they have the technology to monitor him. But there's been no conversation yet. Is he ready to return? But we're getting to the 1st of September, so we'll just have to wait and see if that happens. Padres have won 19 of 22. That's great. Arizona's won 18 of 21. Damn, that's good. And the Dodgers are in first place, though the Wednesday night game was kind of shabby. Dodgers are 71-50 and getting their injured guys back healthy. John, the podium is yours.
Don't you love this? I mean,
this is so cool.
This is historic. This is the best streak they've ever been on. And you called it, by the way, because when they started this stretch of going against bad teams, you said they need to go 15-0. And by my calculation, they're 10-2 so far with 3 games left.
Yeah, I said they have to run the table on these guys so they can plant their flag in first place. Well, they're damn close. They're 2.5 out.
Yeah, isn't it awesome? And I think the last I checked, the Dodgers were losing today. So they might move up another half game. They're leading the baseball in batting average. I mean, there's been teams historically, the Padres have been good pitching, but always terrible hitting. Now they're leading the league in hitting, and it just seems like the mentality, they're going for line drives. You know, it's not home run or bust. And you can see just the approach by guys like Jake Cronenworth, you know, it's just really working right now.
Isn't it interesting that when we started the season and we talked on this podcast, one of the storylines was if these guys don't win, that general manager could be gone. And we used the word accountability because ownership had used the word accountability to me a couple of times, making reference to A.J. Preller. And this thing, 19 wins out of the last 22 games, this team with this unbelievable second half record, it's a byproduct of the architect. A.J. the architect. He's the one that made all the controversial trades, shipped the farm system away to bring all these guys back in. He's the one that went out and found purposeful guys coming off the bench. I don't know where this team would be were it not for Matt Waldron in the first half of the season, where it would be without Higgy behind home plate, who was a throw-in in the Yankee trade, where it would be without Donovan Solano. And how's that guy been cut by 7 different teams? And where'd they be if they didn't have David Peralta, who's now kind of found himself again? I mean, AJ is to blame for those acquisitions, just like AJ is to blame for the roster the way it's structured right now. This sounds weird coming out of my mouth based on what I said opening day. AJ Preller should get some votes for executive of the year in baseball if this thing turns out the way we hope it does.
Well, there's a potentially, I mean, you know, we're dreaming here, but there's a lot of potential awards. I mean, even Mike Schilt, manager of the year. I mean, we can make a lot of cases. But it's just such a great vibe right now. It feels like when the Padres play, they can't lose. But to your point earlier about Michael King, he looks just really calm out there. I'm not worried about innings with him. I'm not worried about innings with Waldron. I think those guys have it all under control. I mean, the Padres are rolling, and we got to feel good about it.
19 wins last 22 games, and they get the rocks. Now, I don't want to throw cold water on this conversation, but once they get through with the rocks, then they start playing real people again, and they just need to continue this along.
Well, for sure. I mean, it's going to get tougher again, but I just want to comment. You were talking about, all the bench bunch and these guys off the bench. It's just making me think of our friend Coach John Quintera.
Yeah.
You got to have veterans coming off the bench, and then the Padres have that. And man, Peralta with the other homer last night or yesterday afternoon, it was great.
Okay. We go from Padre baseball. Let's talk about the other team in the pennant race that we are paying attention to.
The LA Dodgers. There's a lot of trouble there, Chavez Ravine.
Boy, last night I was just floored. I mean, they played kickball. They made 3 errors, and they absolutely screwed Walker Buehler. I mean, that poor guy is struggling himself to come back from the surgeries. He had pitched well in his last couple of rehab assignments, came up there. He just had a tough time finding strikes. Then he'd get a ground ball, and they'd kick it. And then Mookie Betts misplayed a one-hopper in right field that went by him. And Buehler he couldn't survive all this. Here's the bigger question. The term is Dodger way. You didn't just put that up there to piss them off, did you? The term is Dodger way, how they develop their players, their pitchers. They have great history developing arms. To me, something is not right with the Dodger way. They have 6 of their top young arms have all had this in the last 2 years. Forearms, elbows, ligaments, Tommy John surgery. Think of that. 6 of their top pitchers. Obviously, Buehler is a prime example. It's happened twice. Dustin May, second prime example. It's happened twice to him. Then he had the 3rd surgery on his throat. And then you add in all these other guys who've gone down with the exact same injury. I wrote a column on it. I probably won't be getting a Christmas card from the Dodgers public relations staff this year. I wrote a column on it, and one man's opinion that something's not right there. I don't know whether it's everybody's seeking triple digits in velocity. Everybody is trying to throw the son of a bitch slider, which puts a lot of stress on shoulders.
Yeah.
It's the sweeper. Is it stressful innings? Is it what they're doing in bullpens between starts? I mean, how do you explain every one of those top young pitchers has gone down with Tommy John surgery? It's staggering. Here's a list that I just put together, okay? Buehler, May, Emmett Sheehan, who never got out of spring training, Tony Gonsolin, who had been a serviceable veteran, got out of spring training, got hurt, Kyle Hurd, who came from Oklahoma City, and now River Ryan. That's 6. And that does not include Bobby Miller, who's been shut down twice with a shoulder, Yash Yamamoto, who was shut down extended periods with the shoulder. Kershaw is a different set of circumstances with the back than the shoulder, and a whole pile of guys in the bullpen.
And Buehler, too.
Well, I mentioned Buehler.
Okay.
So there's a total. The the Dodgers, as of this hour, have now had 18 pitchers on the DL this season.
Unbelievable.
18. Dodgers are on 34 different pitchers who've thrown in games this season. Dodgers have now used 12 different starters since June 1st. Dodger way working or not working, or am I just reaching for a story, or do you think there's some validity to my concern about Dodger arms?
Well, that's legit. That list doesn't lie. Facts don't lie. But, there's this problem is going on throughout baseball.
Epidemic.
It's an epidemic. But someone, I need to place this in one of the social media comments in Fans Forum. One of the guys on Instagram responded, said, hey, Rick Honeycutt isn't around anymore. And he was kind of the pitching guru there for a long time. So do you maybe think it's the pitching coach there at LA?
Is it Mark Pryor, or is it organizationally? Because a lot of this stuff has happened with some of these guys who've pitched very well at the minor leagues and shown up and gotten hurt here. I don't have a direct answer for you, but I think all the smart guys, the Dodger analytical guys at the stadium, they need to do some evaluation as to why this is happening. I've kept track. According to my list, since spring training opened, we've now had 53 pitchers, 53, either major leaguers or hot prospects, elbow surgery since the end of February. 53. And that's 12 to 14 to 18 months for these guys all being out. So I think there's something there that somebody's got to pay attention to in the hierarchy at Dodger Stadium. So Dodger way, to me, in terms of the great pitching that they've always developed, it's not working at this point in time any longer. John, next topic on the table.
Okay, clearing house in Miami and Denver. What do you hear about this, Lee?
All right, let's talk about the situation in Miami. This has not gotten a lot of play, which kind of surprised me. The Marlins, I think, have one of the worst owners in baseball, running a pretty close second to John Fisher in Oakland. Bruce Sherman, I don't understand why he owns a franchise. I don't understand why he's allowed to own the franchise. This guy bought this thing, and it was great hoopla because he was going to hire Derek Jeter to run it. And Derek Jeter came in and we're going to do it the Yankee way. Well, then they made slow progress, and then Derek Jeter left. Either was asked to leave or he left. Then they hired longtime Dodger executive Kim Ng, who I think's a real bright light. She came in, added some pieces to the young guys that Jeter's people had drafted. They got to the playoffs. And then this year it all fell apart. She got let go in the offseason. And now they hire Peter Bendix, good reputation from Tampa Bay as an assistant general manager. He comes in. He inherits a mess. Nobody's going to the games. They're not winning. His manager has opted out of his contract. Skip Shoemaker's going to be a free agent the last day of the season, doesn't want to stay there any longer. They traded away what few veterans they had left. Peter Bendix yesterday fired 17 front office executives.
17?
Virtually everybody.
Really?
Both assistant general managers that he inherited, 4 field coordinators who run the whole system in the organization, 10 of their scouts, and the director of international scouting, who's got a great track record for doing stuff out of Cuba and out of Central America. He fired 17 people like that. So there's unbelievable chaos. Now he's got a good track record coming out of Tampa, but man, that's a purge like I don't think I've ever seen before. So that's one story. The other story to me is really sad. This situation with Chris Bryant is just so bad. You know, we know Chris Bryant because he was here at the University of San Diego, and Chris Bryant became an outstanding draft pick, the Chicago Cubs, and he's had injury problems. He can't stay healthy to the point now virtually everything that's happening seems to be re-happening, which means it's chronic. He's back on the DL with another back problem. It's his 3rd trip to the DL this season. He has played, I want to say, 184 games for the Colorado Rockies, and they gave him a lot of money to come be the big bat at Coors Field. You know, this is right guy, right abilities to play in a dimension where home runs can fly. So he's played, I want to say he's played 184. He's missed 289 games. Wow. That's a staggering amount, and it's really sad. And they're on the hook for an awful lot of money, and he can't stay on the field. And with him on the field, if it were vintage Chris Bryant, as we knew him at Wrigley Field, with him on the field, with all the other young guys that Colorado has put in place, they're playing all their young guys and they're learning on the job, might be a pretty competitive batting order. But this poor guy is just, he can't get healthy. And once he gets healthy, after he does all the rehab, he goes out and he gets hurt again. Just absolutely stunning story.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for some guys, right? You know, I don't know what the problem is. Is it just injury prone? But, you know, going back to Miami, what is your sense there? Is it pressure from ownership trying to cut costs and strip it down? Or is it Bendix rolling in saying, I want to install a new philosophy?
Well, I'm sure Bendix was given permission on accepting the job that you will have the right to hire your people. But man, he fired 17 in one day. That's stunning to me. But the Miami thing is a much bigger problem. And to me, it's a shocker. You and I have had this conversation, and even some of our people on Fans Forum, this conversation. I thought that would be an unbelievably vibrant market because it's a tremendous Latin American community in South Florida. And what's their game? Baseball.
Yeah.
Especially in Cuba. It's just never happened for them. And they early years, they did well. They won a championship. Jim Leland was unbelievably popular, the Hall of Fame manager. And then they fire sailed it, and they've just never been able to put it back in gear. And they, you know, the bitch was it's a lousy stadium. So they built the new Marlins stadium, and then it's empty because the product isn't very good. So that's a real tough situation in Miami. So South Florida, you got baseball, but you're not supporting baseball.
But they've got 2 championships, which is amazing.
From back in the day.
But still, that matters. The one memory I have of old Marlins baseball is I think they beat the Yankees right after 9/11. Wasn't that?
Yes.
It was in 2001.
Yeah. So, but that was a long time ago, pal.
Yeah, that was.
Okay, we go from baseball. Let's go to football.
Chargers. Oh, my God. I mean, Kaepernick? Is this what you're hearing?
Okay. Let me present one angle to the story that's been reported publicly. Let me present the other angle to the story that's kind of behind the curtain. First things first, Fans Forum chat box is open. As you sit here and listen to us enunciate on all the big stories, express opinions on the big stories, make sure you jump on board so you can join us. Fans Forum, right at the end of this podcast, you will be taking it over. All right, item one, Colin Kaepernick has been out of the National Football League for 7 years, has continued to drop hints to friends, some in the media. He'd sure like the chance to play again. Nobody has given him the opportunity. You know the history of Kaepernick, the civil protest, kneeling for the national anthem as a civil protest on what's happened to African Americans in the country, the unbelievably hard lashback at him personally. Then all NFL players rallied around him, and we saw players, coaches kneeling on the sidelines. NFL could do nothing about it. Guys have a right to express their own emotional opinions, and they did. It then evolved as the season wore on that guys were standing linked arms together, which was, I thought, a great message. But at the end of the day, Kaepernick took a lot of heat. He opted out of his 49er contract. He had injury problems. He hoped he'd get signed again once he rehabbed. Nobody touched him. It was almost as if he was radioactive. Colin Kaepernick early this week indicated he'd sure like the chance to play again. Well, he's age 36. He's been out of it 7 years. I don't know that would happen. He had one meeting with the Baltimore Ravens about 4 years ago. They never got to a contract offer. I was told as Kaepernick at that point did not want backup money. He wanted star salary because he thought, quote, he could still be a star. And Baltimore didn't take the next step and offer him any type of a contract, and he's done nothing since that point in time. I had one opinion of Kaepernick. I was appalled, aghast that Kaepernick would insult the flag the way he did. America, the flag means a lot. America, the flag and freedom allows him to make the kind of money he made as a starting quarterback becoming a star with the 49ers. That being said, though, the longer this went and the more I found out about Kaepernick, the person, not necessarily just the quarterback, the more impressed I was of the guy. The guy has done some unbelievable things in San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland. After-school programs for kids from poor families, feeding them on a daily basis. He went to Ghana and he donated a check of $1 million of his salary to build the first pediatrics hospital in the country of Ghana in Africa. So my opinion of him has kind of changed over the last group of years because I know he's done a lot of civic things. Okay, so that's item one. Kaepernick would like to play. Item two, we find out 24 hours ago that he's had conversations with Jim Harbaugh about coming in as a, quote, consultant, as a coach. Maybe he transitions into some role as a coach for some NFL team. Now, the Chargers coaching staff is in place, and they hired Greg Roman, who has been with Harbaugh before, the 49ers, and track record in Baltimore. So I don't think Kaepernick's coming in to be quarterback coach. I don't think he's coming in to be coordinator. He doesn't have that experience yet, but he could come in as an assistant on kind of a learning curve. But then the more I thought of it, Chargers right now kind of look desperate for a backup quarterback because we don't know if Justin Herbert can be vintage Justin Herbert come opening day. We don't know if he can stay healthy. What if he gets hurt again? And it's obvious to me that Easton Stick might not be the answer. He's been here 4 years. And we saw him last weekend. He was 5 for 13, no first downs in 25 minutes. They just signed Luis Perez, a refugee from the XFL and the United Football League. The kid's a competitive kid. He's a San Diego kid out of Chula Vista. He's probably going to get the chance to play a lot of snaps this weekend, but he's never really played in the NFL. Kaepernick has. So here's the theory. Why don't you bring Kaepernick in? He passes the physical. You got 3 weeks to ramp up his football cardiovascular to get him ready. He knows chunks of the playbook because he was with Harbaugh for an extended period when they went 13-3 in Frisco. You can carry 3 quarterbacks on your active roster. You know, I don't know whether Easton Stick or Luis Perez becomes the other quarterback, but Kaepernick then would be in the meetings, on the field. He'd do all the extra freaking work. You could probably get him an affordable dollar value just to be the backup quarterback to Justin Herbert. And if Herbert isn't totally healthy or gets dinged again, now you got somebody to go to who's got world of experience. Now that might be a little far-fetched. And I know what's coming out of your mouth in 15 seconds. Out of your mouth is going to come, and I'll say it so you can save your breath. Out of your mouth is going to come, why would the Chargers want that distraction on their roster? You're going to bring up the whole social media protest thing. I'm looking at it from the football perspective, that he could be an insurance policy that you would get football ready going forward. Hope you never have to use him, but you might have to use him. And if you had to use him, he's probably better than Easton Stick. Now, that wouldn't be a week from tomorrow. Hopefully it wouldn't be till the 5th week of the season, whatever. I'm looking at it from the football perspective, and my mind has changed socially because all the stuff that I've read and found out about what Kaepernick has done since his, quote, forced retirement. Okay, John, I don't view him as a distraction. You have the floor.
There's a lot in this right here,
Yes,
Lee.
sir.
Okay, let's talk about a number of different things. First of all, it's no surprise Harbaugh talking to Kaepernick because of their relationship. And I had always heard this as a consultant. I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. But, would they want to take that risk? Would they want to open up that Pandora's box and be associated with Kaepernick? Now, for me personally, I thought Kaepernick, back when he was doing the kneeling, was very, very brave. I mean, that took a lot of guts to do that, especially in the National Football League. That's all about, America and the colors and the military. And, there's a conservative group in the NFL. And what he did took a lot of guts, and he had something to say. Now, since then, though, his play really declined. And so when he kept trying to come back, I thought, even if he wanted to, I don't know if he's good enough because his skills have declined, to say nothing of the fact that the team might not want to take him on as a special project with all the backlash they get. But as a consultant, it's interesting. But, your theory, we got a problem with backup QB with Easton Stick and everything else. And I'm like, now I'm starting to think, I wonder if the Chargers, a team that LA doesn't really care about, a team that people make fun of, it's not like they have much to risk in terms of damaging their brand. So why not take Kaepernick, assuming he's good enough to play? And you might actually attract a whole different audience and dynamic around that team to make them relevant again. There's a way to make it work, but in the end, I'd have no confidence that he has the skill to be a quarterback today.
Now, remember, though, he got hurt in Frisco, and then he had shoulder surgery, and it took him forever to recover from the shoulder surgery. Now, that's 7 years removed, and he is a fanatical workout guy and all that, and he throws in the offseason with NFL receivers, etc. I just think it's something that they need to look at, and I'm setting aside the whole social reaction because that's so far removed, and when we saw all the players and all the coaches, including Jerry Jones, link arms on the sidelines as Sunday by Sunday there was a show of unanimity amongst everybody in the National Football League. That changed my thinking about what he initially said, because I was really disappointed. I was really disturbed. America allowed him to make the kind of money he was making, and he's doing this to the flag.
Well, America didn't allow him to make the money.
He earned it.
He earned it. Exactly.
But that's true. But because of America, and then he does this as it relates to the flag and the ceremony out at the 50-yard line. But the longer it went, the more you found out about who the person was, what the person represented. So, all right, I'll throw this question out. Can we get Football Fan? I don't care who you root for. Jump into the Fans Forum chat box and just give us a reaction. Considering where the Bolts are and their need at quarterback 2, considering who he was and the fact he has knowledge of the playbook, considering you still got time to ramp him up, Kaepernick is a potential backup guy, or is that too toxic? Is that too hot for you to address? Fans Forum is open. That's why we're doing this bleeping podcast, to let you respond. God, if I was on radio, do you think the phone lines would burn out?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Get those lines lit. Actually, a lot of people are already diving into Fans Forum. We got people queued up, ready to go.
Okay, so that's the next question as it relates to the Charger situation. Let's run through some other hot topics. NFL Notebook here, huh?
Yeah, look at those logos, including some CFL.
All right, let's start. New England Patriots, you're not going to do this to this team. Last night, they traded Matthew Judon. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick. They had been embroiled He was a favorite of Belichick. Belichick had re-signed him to extensions. Granted, it was a lower price contract. He wanted an upgrade. They talked and talked and talked. They couldn't come to an agreement. He was out of camp. And at the end of the day, I think that Jared Mayo, the new head coach, said, this is too much of a distraction. Sent him to Atlanta. Atlanta welcomes him. They gave up a third-round pick for a 32-year-old linebacker who can still play. Then this morning, Atlanta says, you come to camp, you get on the field, and you play. We are not talking about contracts until you're on the field playing for us.
Okay.
So now suddenly there's another barrier. So it's up to Juden. Does he want to play? Does he want to retire? Go to Atlanta and see if Arthur Blank will take care of you. So that's interesting. San Francisco. Love me not. This thing's been going on for like a month. Brandon Ayuk. So we got the whole storyline now. Frisco and Pittsburgh have reached agreement on a deal. Ayuk would go to Pittsburgh for a $28 million contract per year, which that's double what he's making now at 14.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be getting a really good young player. San Francisco has yet to decide whether they want to take only draft picks. Pittsburgh won't give them what they want in terms of defensive players, only draft picks. So this thing is stalled. Yesterday, San Francisco reached out to Ayuk's agent for the umpteenth time. Let's reopen talks. I think they want to keep the guy because there's so much upside. He's so young and he's so gifted. If they could trade Deebo Samuel, they'd trade Deebo Samuel, but nobody wants that contract and nobody wants the injury history that Deebo is kind of compiled. So Frisco's got a deal to send him to Pittsburgh, but they have yet decided whether they want to make the deal or they're going to try to re-sign him. New York Jets, the other big holdout, Hassan Riddick, linebacker. They got him from the Eagles. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Now he's making $14.5 million a season. That's a good contract.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the deal. He wants an extension. Pretty good player, pass rusher par excellence. The Jets are just tired of it all. They want him in camp. They traded for him so they could get him on the team to help that rebuilt defense. He's not shown up. He has to be traded. Jets' response from their general manager, your name's on that contract, your signature's on that contract, you owe us 1 year. Play. Now he's getting fined. He's lost $1.8 million in fines with his holdout because he's not even in the building. He didn't go through OTAs or anything. They said they're not trading him. You owe us a year. Come fulfill your contract. He wants the extension. So that's where we are. Minnesota. This is bad. J.J. McCarthy came off the bench, and we talked about it on the Monday bonus podcast. 3 for 188 in his first game.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty impressive. Good command. He got knocked around. Showed up Sunday with pain and stiffness in the knee. Sent him for an MRI, torn meniscus. They go in to do the surgery. They find total torn meniscus, not just a chip. Gone for the year. Not a good story for Minnesota, because the way he had come looked as if he was going to get the chance to play. Rams, they don't need more injuries. Now they got another injury. You know, they already got 7 guys out with injuries in camp in 3 weeks. Matthew Stafford goes down yesterday, hamstring. He's not going to play this weekend against the Chargers, might not play the third game. They got to handle him with kid gloves. Poor Sean McVay. He's got so many issues with so many injuries. And at this late date, he's lost 3 starting offensive linemen. He's lost 2 of his top 3 cornerbacks. Now his quarterback is dinged. So they're going to handle Matthew Stafford with kid gloves. And the last one is the British Columbia Lions of the Canadian Football League, one of the best teams in the CFL. They just came across the border, and they just got an NFL quarterback who got cut. We had talked about this about a week ago. I know this kid. His name is Nathan Rourke. He went to where I went, Ohio U. He went to the BC Lions as an undrafted free agent, went up there and set the all-time rookie records, throwing the football all over the place. Opted out of his contract from BC, came here, been with 4 clubs, went to Jacksonville, but Trevor Lawrence was there. They finally cut him. Went to New England. He was in that mix of all these names on their roster. Didn't get much of a chance to do anything. Cut him. Went to the Giants. They just cut him. Went to Atlanta. Lasted a week there. Asked to be released. He's just signed to go back to the BC Lions. He's going to play this weekend. And he signed a 3-year deal at pretty high money for the Canadian League. So he's gone home. He's a Canadian by birth. He's gone home to play for the BC Lions. Pretty good kid. So I'll keep track of him because that's the example I try to use. I talk to agents, who represent these quarterbacks that are on the periphery, who keep getting cut, or you're on development and will never get a chance to play. Why don't you take him to Canada? Let him be a star. Be a star in Canada. They may grow up to love the place. There's a veteran in Winnipeg, Zach Collaros, who's won Grey Cup rings. He tried to come from the NFL out of the University of Cincinnati, didn't make it. He went up to the CFL, and he's been a star in a couple different places. So there's a living to be made. There's a name to be shown, and there's stardom north of the border. So Nathan Rourke has gone back to the BC Lions, and I bring that up because we talked about him. One of the people on Fans Forum asked me about him just a couple weeks ago. So, John, you got quarterbacks, you got unhappy football players, you're a general manager. Solve the damn problem.
Solve the problem. Well, first of all, Nathan Rourke, it's nice to see him, go back to the CFL. I kind of think it's an ego thing, with a lot of these players because they want to be an NFL quarterback. But at least he has the experience in Canada, so it makes sense. Just commenting on other teams, tough break for JJ McCarthy.
Oh.
I mean, he just looked so good, and he was exceeding expectations. And I didn't even think he was going to be a first-round draft pick based on what he did at Michigan. And boy, he's looked good. And then this happens. The Hassan Riddick thing, dude's getting bad advice. I mean, if you're getting $50,000 a day fines, it's what is it, 1.8 million? That's bad advice. He's got to come into camp.
The only name I can mention, I know you got a good Rolodex.
Yeah.
Just call Hassan Riddick and just give him Antonio Brown's phone number. Give him the running back who had been with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was headed for stardom and set out an entire year. Give him his number too.
Was that Mendenhall? I don't remember.
No, I can't recall the name, but those are the two marquee guys who are doing really well in their careers and said, I'm not playing. Sat out a year, never the same again.
Yeah. And they're never the same, and these guys have a bird in the hand, right? So I totally understand why they want to, try to take advantage of the opportunity, get a little leverage and try to negotiate something. But at some point, you got to realize that there's money on the table and take it. The last comment about the about the New England Patriots, I'm thinking more of it from the Atlanta Falcons perspective. Atlanta's made some big improvements. I mean, we got the two quarterbacks there. It seems like they're getting close to being in a position to win.
They need defense. They need Judon. But for them to stand up, I don't know, is that throwing a barrier right in front of the front door of the building? Unless you come in and play, we're not going to talk about an extension. You can't sit home and hold out. You owe us this contract. So
yeah, they're right.
Interesting to see. Okay, we get to halftime this Thursday podcast going towards a great sports weekend. It's brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers. There are 9 stores here and the one that's opening in Orange County. Don't care what the project is, although John's got a swimming pool out here. That's why he was at Dixieline today. Just fill the people in about what they're doing for people who have swimming pools here in San Diego.
For swimming pools, it's not really their forte. I mean, actually, if a contractor is building a swimming pool and is going to dig the hole and put in all of the rebar and some lumber, then that's right in Dixieline's sweet spot. Yeah. So, but great guys. They're opening up a new location in Dana Point. People in Orange County are fired up for that. Got some new alternatives for people to buy lumber, and they're just good guys. Been in San Diego for 100 years, helping people, homeowners and contractors.
Homeowners inside, doing something out on the patio next to the pool. Think about these people. Dixieline Lumber. Before we get to the second half of our Thursday podcast, just a couple of business items. You're on Twitter. You're on social media. I want you to join my Twitter all-star team. Want you to go to X, my handle, my slug line, my nickname, @Hacksaw1090, @Hacksaw1090. Want you to follow what I put on Twitter day in, day out. You like sports? Have you ever checked my website? Why have you not checked my website? What the hell's wrong with you? It is all written. It's really different. It's really dynamic. LeeHacksawHamilton.com. Check it every morning. You'll get a real kick out of it. There's an orange box right on the homepage. That'll take you to the insiders group that we've done. We offer all kinds of special things for everybody who's part of Hacksaw's insiders group. Fill out the orange box, get on the mailing list. Want you to share, want you to subscribe. Tell everybody what we do Mondays at 1 p.m., what we do Thursdays at 1 p.m., going towards a great sports weekend. And make sure you subscribe. That way you will get the alerts every time we put something new up on our YouTube channel, which is an awful lot, of course, during the week. And when we're done, his best friends are taking over. It's called Fans Forum. John, explain it for everybody who's new on the live stream that doesn't understand what the hell we're talking about.
What the hell we're talking about. I want to talk about the insiders group for a minute. But first, with Fans Forum, you got a question or a comment. I'm telling you, when we were talking about Colin Kaepernick and the Chargers, it just lit up. I mean, talk about getting the phone lines lit. So if you have a question or comment in the world of sports, drop your comment in the live chat on Facebook, X, or on YouTube to get involved in Fans Forum. But as far as the Hacksaw's Insiders Group goes, for the audience, in case you're wondering, Lee, obviously you write it every day, every night. You send it to me like late in the evening. And then usually in the morning, I take your email and I kind of format it and send it out to the email list. So I get the pleasure of reading it every day. And I'm telling you, it is unbelievable for you out there. If you miss having a sports page, remember back in the day, I remember when I was a kid, I'd eat my cereal with the sports page right there on the breakfast table. This is just like that, but it's jam-packed, bullet-pointed, loaded. You'll know everything in the world of sports. You sign up for Hacksaw's Insiders Group and you'll get that just about every day.
You are right. It is bleeping brilliant.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. And I'm not saying that just to stroke you.
Okay, we are here. Let's go to the second half. Got a lot more to cover before we get to the Fans Forum segment. John, next topic on the table.
Okay, we're talking UCLA. We're talking Coach Prime.
Let's talk about UCLA. They're catching some heat. They're not real happy with the Big Ten. You think? You think this is going to work out bad? You think? UCLA's kind of upset at the schedule. They just revealed they're going to travel nearly 23,000 miles for 6 road games. This is a shocker. They open at Hawaii. They play at LSU. I mean, you talk about going at the opposite ends of the spectrum. And then from there, they got all these trips back east as a member of the Big Ten Conference. 23,000 miles for 6 road trips. And they're kind of unhappy at the way the schedule was laid out, back-to-back roadies, or it's going to be really, really hard on UCLA. Poor Deshaun Foster. I mean, he's going in with a 6th-year quarterback. He's gone in having lost a bunch of players. Now, he does have a lot of guys returning on his offense, but we just don't know what UCLA football under a rookie head coach is going to be like. Week 2, after Neon Dion, Coach Prime's best friend here, lectured the media on their job and their responsibility. It was kind of a snotty press conference in Boulder. Well, the Boulder Daily Camera, I told you this was going to happen. The Boulder Daily Camera's columnist took exception to everything that Deion Sanders said about the media. Mm-hmm. Deion would only take favorable questions. He refused to answer any questions from anybody representing CBS because he's been at war with CBS over investigative reports over his kids and their financial issues and junk off the field. And then he kind of insulted the Denver Post lead columnist, did the same thing for the Boulder Daily Camera. I said at the end of last Monday's podcast, you do not want to get into a feud with the media. Media's got a job to do. Let them do their job. You may disagree. That's okay. But I'll guarantee you, if you get into a feud, the media has the last bullet in the gun every time. Boulder Daily Camera's lead columnist, the circus is in town. The bombast no longer resonates. Everything with Deion Sanders is now conspiracy and grievances. This guy was an all-time trash talker. He can't back it up as a coach. Bright lights have now turned into bitterness, the end result of a 4-8 football season. Right there, front page, Boulder Daily Camera, about the hometown team and the coach. Oh, I knew this was going to happen, and yet he just went ahead and did it, and there was no rationale or reason for did it. Now, unless he goes 8-4 or 9-3 or whatever, he's not going to be able to yell his way, curse his way, scream his way out of the box and the troubles that he's created for himself. John Riley, Rand McNally, talk about UCLA's road trip. Nice decision they made. Go ahead, talk about Coach Prime.
Okay, let's go UCLA first. Now, I remember reading that their athletic department had a huge budget deficit.
$103 million.
Yeah, it's because they have a million different sports, and which is great. Now they go to the Big 10 or the Big 18, whatever you want to call them. They're going to make a lot more money, but is it going to right size their budget?
It's going to have to somewhere down road.
Mm-hmm.
But the negative is, as part of what USC and UCLA did, which led to the death of the Pac-12, this is just not about football or basketball. This is about all the sports. I mean, you're into Olympic rowing. Is your ass going to take an East Coast road trip to see UCLA face Maryland on Chesapeake Bay in rowing in the spring? Everybody who competes at UCLA is going to compete against other teams of the Big Ten. Does that make a lot of progress?
It's nuts. It doesn't make sense at all, and I think maybe for football it might, but everything else it doesn't. So I'm just curious to see how this whole thing sorts out, because I know they have a new AD, they got the new head coach, and then what's going on with basketball is what's the guy's name? Mick Cronin. He's still there, right?
Oh yeah, he's still there, and obviously he knows how to recruit, and he recruits internationally. But they got to travel too.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, just
as far as Coach Prime goes, you're saying he's talking about conspiracy theories and bombast. And I'm like, wait a minute, are we talking sports or are we talking politics?
Both.
Yeah. I know, again, I like Coach Prime because, now granted, he is edgy and he will piss people off, but I like his message about, having self-confidence and trying to groom these young men to be confident ball players on and off the field. There's a lot of very positive messaging, but I think they've just been needling him so much that, now I think it's finally gotten to the point where, as you said, the media has the last bullet and they're shooting it. So, we often wondered how long Coach Prime would last in Colorado, because his shtick probably plays bigger in a bigger city. So is this just going to be a 2 or 3 year gig and he's going to go somewhere else?
I think it's a very, very valid question. At the end of the day, I'm just going to pass the baton on to people watching us on live stream. Anybody got an opinion on Coach Prime and how he's acted, what he's put on the field, what the future of Colorado football with him? Because dude did finish with 8 losses in the last 9 games, and they got their ass kicked and they got piled on because other people in the Pac-12 were really upset last year about what he did, quote, in the transfer portal to all the players.
I remember the Oregon game.
Oh, yes.
That was a ass whooping.
Yeah. Dan Lanning kept his starters in that game.
Yeah, he did.
Fourth quarter. That was bad. So, hey, that's why we do this. Fans Forum. You got an opinion on Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, in over his head, headed for trouble, or do you side with what he says? Feel free to jump on board. You either side with me or you side with my co-host. Go ahead. We want you to join us there. Next topic on the table.
Hockey hotline. Here we go.
Here we go. Everybody's got salary cap problems in the National Hockey League. Dateline is Edmonton, Alberta. Dateline is the St. Louis Blues. Edmonton is up against the cap of $88 million. They signed most all their guys except they had 2 young restricted free agents. They could not offer them extensions at this point. The Blues, 2 days ago, in the middle of the night, signed offer sheets to 2 of their top young players. One of them is defenseman Philip Broberg, who played the American League here. We saw him with Bakersfield, went up there, and he played really well as the Oilers got to the Stanley Cup Finals. The other is Dylan Holloway, kind of a special teams checker, etc. They both signed offer sheets with the St. Louis Blues. The problem is those offer sheets are worth $13 million, and Edmonton does not have cap space. Edmonton's got 7 days to either match the Blues offer sheets to Broberg or Holloway, or get draft pick compensation, take a 2nd and 3rd round pick. Edmonton is kind of backed into a corner. They didn't want to lose Broberg, but they got a problem with Broberg unless they're going to move somebody else in a trade to clear payroll. Oilers got an issue. St. Louis played this thing right to the bitter end and then made the flashpoint offers. The other is that's the logo of the Quebec Nordique. Once upon a time, that was a really vibrant franchise in the World Hockey Association. Because of economics, the Nordique could not stay in the NHL. They had been admitted. They became the Colorado Avalanche. That franchise moved. Anyhow, their executive vice president and lead scout, he eventually became a general manager. His name is Gilles Léger, just passed away at age 83. Listen to the list of NHL players that he got to Quebec City when they were in the WHA and then transitioned into the National Hockey League. Do you know the name Peter Forsberg?
Yeah.
Do you know the name Joe Sakic?
Yes.
Do you know the name Matt Sundin?
Yes.
Those were part of the pipeline. The other one was Peter Stasny, who defected from Czechoslovakia. That was part of the pipeline of guys Gilles Leger scouted, drafted, signed in Quebec, and a whole bunch of those guys wound up as the cornerstones of the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. I knew him back in my minor league days when I went to the World Hockey Association. Cigar chomping scout, old school, French brogue when he spoke to you.
French brogue.
Cool guy, but nice man. Gilles Leger has passed away at age 83. Those of you, a part of our old Canada network, probably know who I'm talking about, but he was a really, really good player personnel guy. If we don't cover it all, it's because we haven't gotten to the last page here.
Yeah.
Here we go. Hacksaw's headlines. This will be fun.
Okay. Well, first, before we get to that, Lee, can I at least I have a question.
Go ahead.
This Nordique logo, I've never seen it before. And obviously it looks like a hockey stick and a puck on the right, but what is that on the left? Is that like a letter N?
It's the letter N, or it can be an igloo. Nordique means to the north, which is where Quebec City is in northern Quebec.
Aha.
That's why they came up. Their typical logo is the French flower, the fleur de lis.
Oh, yeah.
That had been part of their logo, but that was the original logo of either, it looks like Inuit igloo with a hockey stick and a puck, or it could be the letter N with a hockey. That's a good question.
Well, thank you. Every once in a while, I'll come up with one. But their old logo was like the New Orleans Saints, right?
Yeah, the fleur de lis. It was blue, red, and white.
Right on. Yeah.
So he was an unbelievable scout.
That's cool. That's a good story.
Okay, let's go. Last page. Here we go.
Okay, Sports Wire. Here it is.
Yeah, we had a lot to talk about. NASCAR. I saw the end of the Richmond 400 Sunday night. Austin Dillon was chasing down the leaders. And the race got red flagged with 2 laps to go because of accidents. So they restart, and Austin Dillon is fighting to try to get to the lead. Joey Logano jumps to the lead with 1 lap to go. Denny Hamlin is right there with him. And Austin Dillon, who hadn't won in 21 straight races over 2 years, was in 3rd place. So Austin Dillon gets up on the back bumper of Logano with a lap to go and taps him. Everybody that's called draft bumping does it. He hit him so hard, he put him on the wall. And then, as everybody was fishtailing, Denny Hamlin took the lead, and he hit Hamlin, knocked Hamlin out. Austin Dillon goes to the finish line, gets a checkered flag. Then we find out on the headset, just as the restart is starting, whoever is a spotter tells Dillon, wreck him.
Oh.
With instructions, take these guys out so you can get the win to qualify for the NASCAR playoffs, which are coming up. A lot of money involved. So Dillon did it. And then Dillon was defiant in the post-race interview. He says, if you were driving, what would you do? As if that legitimizes what he did. Anyhow, NASCAR reviewed the whole episode this week, and yesterday they revoked. They didn't take the win away. He kept the win and the prize money. But because he got the win, he'd automatically go to the playoffs. They revoked the chance to go to the playoffs. So he's still not qualified for the playoffs. And then they also docked him and the owner 50 points for what they did because he impacted the integrity of the end of the race by intentionally wrecking those guys. It'll be interesting this week. They go to Michigan. I wonder if there'll be any payback for Austin Dillon in the Michigan 400. So he got that. Overnight, this happened in the middle of the night. U.S. World Cup soccer team has a new head coach. You know, they kind of got stung because they thought they had the chance to get Jurgen Klopp from the English Premier League, who's decided, I'm going to stay retired. I'm not coming out of retirement. In the middle of the night, they hired Argentine coach Mauricio Pochettino, former head coach at former head coach at Chelsea, Hotspur, Paris Saint-Germain. Guy's got a nice track record. The guy plays attack football, soccer. The guy has developed stars like Harry Kane, Luke Shaw, Cole Palmer, and Dele Alli. Got a great track record. So he comes to the U.S. and he's a player's coach. He's very effervescent, very flamboyant, and they push the ball and they play physical up front. This is going to be fun because what does he inherit? Christian Pulisic and a bunch of young guns. I can't wait to see how Reyna, how Balogun, how Weston McKennie, all the other young guys play with Pulisic in a brand new system. Coach has got himself a really good reputation. So that's kind of cool. By the way, speaking of football, aka soccer, English Premier League opens this Friday. You make sure you're up at 4:30 Friday morning to watch the opening game.
Here we go.
Big story, obviously, the changing of coaches. There's 5 new coaches in the EPL. And, of course, Jurgen Klopp retiring at Liverpool. That's going to be interesting to watch. PGA LIV. The PGA just put out their 2025 schedule. It includes no new events. It includes nothing in terms of linkage with the LPGA. It does not open the door from anybody from the LIV to come play in regular season tournaments. And people are asking, we're almost to fall of 2024, and you've been talking for 2 years, and you don't have this merger done. It's absolutely amazing. Rory McIlroy confirmed yesterday that the PGA negotiating team meets 3 times a week on Zoom calls with the LIV, and they have still not resolved all the issues. Wow. Who's going to run the European Tour? Who's going to guide the LPGA? Do we open the door to allow the Dustin Johnsons and the DeChambeaus and the Mickelsons to come back? Is there a penalty payment for what they did to the PGA if we let them back? None of this has been resolved at all. It's absolutely stunning. 2 years in, they're no closer. By the way, Phil Mickelson, we talked about this on Monday, has indicated he's been approached to join the negotiating side of the LIV. I think Mickelson is the heir apparent to replace Greg Norman, who everybody hates. He's the one that created this whole mess.
Right.
So maybe Mickelson gets on board and he'd negotiate across the table with Rory McIlroy and the other PGA players to try to solve the situation. But, John, they made no progress at all. And the last note is a basketball note. Unless you're a basketball junkie, you might not recognize who this person is. This guy was a star in the 50s. He was a #1 pick in the NBA draft. His name was Frank Selvy. He was a big shooting guard, played at small college Furman in South Carolina. He just passed away at the age of 88. Frank Selvy played for the Lakers, played for the Celtics for about 9 years back in the day, in the 50s. He scored 100 points, all-time record in college basketball.
Wow.
100 points in a Division I game, 41 baskets. This is before the three-point shot.
Right.
41 baskets in a 40-minute college
That's
basketball
incredible.
game. Yeah, he just passed away. 100-point game in 1954.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so John, I threw a lot here on the wall. Go ahead. You can be a redneck. You can be a soccer fan. Go ahead from Saudi Arabia. Give me your opinion on the LIV.
I want to be a redneck. Okay, so let's talk NASCAR. Now, they said wreck 'em, and this, it's like guys throwing elbows, when they're getting near the finish line. Do you think what he did was illegal? It's certainly unethical, but is it illegal?
Bump drafting is not illegal. But
Okay.
bump drafting the way he did, where he hit the guy went sideways, and he drove into his back bumper to spin him off.
Oh,
the
just
track.
kind of nudged him out of the
Oh,
way.
yeah, big time. And
Okay.
then Hamlin ducks beneath him. Hamlin's in front, and he hits Hamlin from the rear, puts him in the upper wall. Now, his defiance in the post-race interview was, you're the driver, what would you do? I'm trying to qualify for the NASCAR playoffs. So it was right there at the end. I think that got him as much hot water as the bump drafting, but it happens. It's racing. But at high speeds, and the fact that everybody's fighting now to get into the playoffs, there's only a couple races left before the big money playoffs begin. Oh, it did not go well down in the pits.
It reminds me of Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder.
You got it.
So it's all good. It's very entertaining. Team USA, this is interesting about the coach because I read about it just earlier this morning, and this is a big upgrade over Bruce Arena. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, but I get you're going to argue with me, I'm sure. I'm not so sure that we needed to get rid of Berhalter because he had laid the foundation with all these young guys coming in, and to me, the expectation was awful high to have a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds playing with Christian Pulisic and expect them to do well at the Copa level. I might be in the minority. I'm sure some soccer fan out there is going to corner kick me and then say, you're so full of crap. I would have stayed with Berhalter because these were his guys and he had laid the foundation. Now, Pochettino, that's good track record. The guys that I ran through that he has developed in the EPL, that's pretty impressive. So, but he's not an American. There's language limitation there, so that's kind of different. But I guess he earns it. He's never coached at a quote international level. You know, he has coached at the club level, where he has access to those players for the whole bloody calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
The international thing, the World Cup thing, is so different because in non-World Cup years, you don't have access to the international players except when there's a short window where you can bring them in practice, and then you might play Copa or you play the Gold Cup, which comes up next in the 2025 schedule. So that it's different for Pochettino to take over because he won't have access to those players on a day in, day out basis like he had at Chelsea or at Hotspur.
I like it though. I mean, this guy is kind of not as big as Jurgen Klopp, but he's sort of in that ballpark.
His track record, his resume is more impressive than mine and yours.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then just quickly on the other comments, I mean, I am just shocked about PGA LIV can't get this thing to merge, but you talked about how they didn't even do any sort of a merger or coordination with the LPGA. Now, what is that potentially going to look like?
Well, one of the conversations was we would incorporate and take over and market and run LPGA. And a byproduct of that would be we would do something really creative in Europe or in the Pacific Rim. Because remember, this merger is supposed to be for global golf. It's everybody. It's just not the PGA Tour at Torrey Pines or anything like that. It's everywhere. And what they're proposing, and I don't know whether it came from the PGA side or it came from the LIV, was, okay, we're going to operate LPGA, which needs help in terms of sponsorship and notoriety. And we're going to take some LPGA events and make them joint events with the PGA and the LIV, and maybe let them all play together.
That's
or maybe
awesome.
Maybe they play a best ball tournament together.
Yeah.
But they haven't gotten there, and they've been meeting for 2 solid years on this. And that's just one of the creative aspects that has been hard to finalize. The other thing is, what's the price that Phil Mickelson and all these other guys have to pay to get back into this fraternity? Because look what they did to the fraternity. John, you violated your PGA Tour card. I'm supposed to open up the door and welcome you with open arms?
Yeah. I mean, I do like the idea of integrating the women into this because there are a lot of legit stars in the LPGA,
sure.
And then there's a lot of eye candy in the LPGA as well. And I think they could make that work. And I like that sort of best ball scramble pairs, mixed doubles kind of thing. That sounds fun.
So this is the PGA's commissioner said, because he was asked on a Zoom call, why is there no deal done? He says, it is just very complicated. And I assume, there's a whole pile of things listed that we got to solve. And the last one to me is I think the big thing, because I mean, guys like Scotty Scheffler, who are very influential, we are not letting them back in as if nothing happened.
These guys got to get over themselves and just find a way to kind of bring this whole thing together because they're killing the golden goose. The final comment, this Frank Selvey guy, I had never heard of him. And then in the best 15 this morning, you were writing about him. And I'm like, dude, this guy's got a legit track record. I had never even heard of him.
Yeah, everybody remembers Wilt Chamberlain's Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, like 1962.
Yeah.
100 points.
Against the New York Knicks for the Philadelphia Warriors. And,
the Warriors. That's right.
And I had remembered Selvey because he scored 100. That was a long time ago. Now, there's a small college record. There's a kid from West Virginia at either Division II or NAIA. I want to say scored 132 points in a game, maybe a decade ago. But that's small college. He was a 3-point shooting specialist. He scored 132.
I don't know how you can physically fit all that into a 40-minute game in college.
Just feed you the ball every time.
Yeah, that's what's got.
And that's what it was. But Frank Selvey was the first one. He did it, obviously, in Division I basketball. Hey, it's time for Fans Forum. Our podcast is brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores to serve you in San Diego. You got need for materials, they've got that. You want some ideas, they can help you with that too. Dixieline Lumber. John, do you think there's a few people stacked up from here to the 405 exchange wanting to get on this podcast? Holy cow.
I think so. And, I might do it a little differently because there was a lot of interesting back and forth. So we may have some multiple people here posting. Let's start off with Gregory. What are your thoughts on the Sam Pounder firing at ESPN, defending women's sports, not getting involved by men when ESPN is citing budget cuts, as well as Robert Griffin III?
Well, they fired RG3 today. Sam Pounder, she'd been there a long time. I want to say she'd been there 12 years, which is kind of surprising. And she had her own niche. I was kind of disappointed to hear that. I watch ESPN. I don't know that RG3 brought anything special to the table. The rumor is he might wind up on the NFL Network now to replace the fired Michael Irvin. But I didn't think there was anything spectacular. They got so many guys that they run through there now. It's just not the same ESPN that we first used to pay a lot of attention to. I felt bad for Sam Pounder getting fired because she really stood up and she had strong opinions. I thought she did a good job, but maybe these people will resurface other places.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, back in the day, it was always Chris Berman and Bob Lee. And there was, then there was the Patrick Olbermann era. And it's just a natural turnover, I think, in that business, right?
Yeah, it evolves. People come, people go. Two of the guys that I worked the closest with in the NFL have passed away, John Clayton and Chris Mortensen.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely stunning.
Yes.
But I just didn't think RG3 had any clout at all. I wasn't quite sure what the role was supposed to be. And he's just another guy making noise as far as I was concerned.
You know, what's also interesting, and you'll see this in a lot of sports, but I notice it particularly in the MLB network, where they were actually interviewing Jackson Merrill. And it was the host was one woman and 3 former players, but all 3 former players were black. And I'm thinking, okay, right on, because you're seeing a lot of this sort of bringing in different people, diversity. Some might say that maybe they're swinging the pendulum too far, but I think it's a good thing to kind of build an audience of young people to get other folks on there they can relate to.
With recognizable names who've just retired.
Yeah,
I think that's a piece of the equation. Although too many voices, some of these podiums, holy cow, you got 6 or 8 people on a round table. There's only one microphone that you can hear. You can't have everybody talking all over everybody. That's kind of hard.
It's hard enough with just 2.
Yeah, you're the loudest one in the room. Go ahead, next question.
Okay, let's go to Angel. And he says, it's official. The Marlins are the new 1993 Padres.
Fire sale. That's a disaster. I just have a problem with the way Bruce Sherman's done business there. And he's got a brand new stadium, and they just don't pay their players, and they trade their players, and now he's firing everybody. Let the new general manager come in. I've never seen a day where 17 people lost their job in one day. Even in broadcasting, as bad as some of the circumstances that I've walked through and lived through and got taken out on, I don't think we fired 17 in one day.
Oh, I went through a layoff during the dot-com era where probably 50 to 60 people in one day. And it was brutal. I mean, they took out like 80% of the company. I was in the 20%. But yeah, it can be tough. This here, clearing house, he's got to have in mind his own guys. Hopefully they can step right in.
He's going to take everybody he knew in Tampa. I'm sure he is.
Yeah, and maybe cherry pick from the existing front office.
Next question.
Okay, let's go to Emmanuel. The Dodgers have 4 guys on the 60-day DL. Which players on the 40-man roster will be cut to activate Muncy, Edman, Yamamoto, and Brazier?
Well, I don't know if the pitcher is going to come back immediately. Yamamoto will be back if he does one rehab start. Edman is in Oklahoma City. Muncy just went 4 for 4 the other night in Oklahoma City. So those 3 will come back. Muncy is already on the 40-man roster. Edman, I'm trying to think if Edman was on the 60-day DL in St. Louis. I think he might have been. So he's going to have to get activated on the 40. Yamamoto is already on the 40. So they're shuttling some people. I mean, the first big name who was shown the door was Ahmed Rosario, the former Gold Glove shortstop, who they had just gotten 2 weeks prior. He was let go. Now, I don't know whether he's going to show up at Oklahoma City and just play, and somebody gets hurt, they could bring him back up. He'd have to be put back on the 40-man roster. But, they'll move some people, or you put somebody else on the 60-day DL if there's got some other guys that are injured that they might not be able to get back.
Well, they also got rid of Paxton, so.
And Paxton got hurt.
Yeah, and he got hurt.
He tore his calf in Boston.
Yeah. So, but they'll find a way to sort of invent a 15-day injured list stint to a little soreness in the quad.
But you got to get a guy on the 40 before you could put him on the 25.
Right.
So you got to move somebody off the 40 to activate him to get him on the 40, so you could get him onto the 25-man roster. There's a lot of calculus. You got to pay attention close to it. We move on. Thanks, Sam.
All right, we move on. And where was this comment here? It was about the Chargers. And yeah, here it is. And This is from King Zoe. He says, I think Harbaugh will have struggles this year, and a lot of it is only because the Chargers are just cursed.
It just takes time. I mean, they did get rid of a lot of players. I think I want to count. I think they got rid of 24 veteran players. Now they've added a lot to replace them, different types of players. I think, and I've told us, I've been on some national shows asking me about it. I just believe they're at least one more draft away from being complete, and then you got to stay healthy. So they at this point in time, they got a really young wide receiver core. Those guys got to prove that they can play. They got to make sure they got the right running back in place of Austin Eckler. Though, Gus Edwards has had flashes and J.K. Dobbins has had flashes when they were both in Baltimore that they played pretty well. But they both got real injury history. Who's going to be your defensive tackle? They need somebody to play alongside Morgan Fox. They got rid of the other 3 defensive tackles. They brought in guys from Carolina. They're still bringing in guys. So the jury's still out there. I love their linebacking. I mean, from Bosa to Khalil Mack to what they've got at inside linebacker, I counted today, they got 7 linebackers who I think are players. So I think this is going to be a blitz-happy, linebacker-led defense. Secondary, they got to replace people because they let a whole bunch of cornerbacks go, but some of the guys they let go weren't playing very well. So I think it's your transition, King, and I think at the end of the day, a year from today, after another draft with Harbaugh's people and Joe Ortiz calling the shots, I think it'll be a better, deeper team. I just think there's too many issues with the Bolts right now, and they got to get the quarterback back on the field healthy.
Well, there's some comments here also about Easton Stick. Derek says, no one uses a Easton Stick anymore. Everyone prefers carbon fiber now. But what are they going to do in that backup quarterback role?
They're going to play Luis Perez against the Rams. He's going to get a long look. Now, it's kind of a cool story. He's an undersized quarterback. He's from Chula Vista. He went to, I think it's called East Texas State. It's actually Texas A&M Commerce now. But he played at East Texas State, set all kinds of small college passing records. And he's been in and out of camps. He's played in the spring leagues. He played in the XFL, played the United Football League, and played really, really well. But that's at a much lower level. I think he'll get a look-see this weekend. Easton Stick is still there. Now, I'm kind of surprised. We have not had a Kaepernick comment yet, or are you avoiding the gunfire here?
Oh, no, they're coming. They're coming. They're on the list.
You want me to duck under the table now?
Yeah.
That leads me to my theory. What about Kaepernick? You could keep him as a third quarterback and give him time to develop. You got 3 weeks to get his cardiovascular up. Why not, if you believe in the guy? Now, he's been away from it for 7 years. That's a long time to be out of pro football. But he'd be the backup, and he'd be taking a ton of snaps Monday through Friday just to be your backup. Then you would get him regimented up to the point where you hope he could play. Or am I reaching too far? Is that a bridge too far, John? Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's an interesting topic, because there's still people in grudge mode about Kaepernick, America, and you're shaming the flag, and he's never going to overcome those people.
Right.
But, could he be an asset in some way to Harbaugh's organization as a coach or even as a consultant? They clearly need help at quarterback in some way, but as a player, I just think, they need to turn the page on that idea.
Okay, let's move on. See if somebody else got a different opinion here. I apologize if I hit a hot button, but that's what talk show hosts do. I thought about it, and there it is.
That's what you do. Okay, let's go to Chris here. Amazing how 16 days of Olympics has dropped Caitlin Clark to the second most dominant female athlete in the world. Rachel Gunn of Australian breakdancing is clearly the new number 1. React to me.
You're the smartest guy in the room based on your diploma up on the wall there from UCSD. How do you score breakdancing? Come on, sucker. Give me an answer. How do you score breakdancing? And when you solve that one, the other question, how do you score the underwater swimming event?
Deep questions from Hacksaw. It's just, I think of breakdancing, it's kind of an urban thing. You're out there feeling the vibe, kind of feeling it with your friends in the neighborhood. It's weird as a sport, but I would imagine, even going to your synchronized swimming, I think of Saturday Night Live skits, but it's got to be like the gymnastics or the ice skating, right? Do they present what they're going to do and the complexity and difficulty of each stunt, and then they measure how well they execute it?
That's a good answer. You should make that up on the fly.
It's amazing what comes out of me sometimes.
Well, sometimes you drink tequila early in the afternoon. Yes. Hey, by the way, speaking of Caitlin Clark, this is odd. The WNBA, because of the Olympics, it took a month's break. The second half of the WNBA season is starting this weekend. So Caitlin Clark goes back into the headlines. Isn't that weird? Do you ever imagine baseball taking a month off in the middle of the season? I don't know. Baseball says they want to be in the Olympics in 2028. How big a hole is that going to create in the schedule?
I like that idea a lot.
But everybody will be in game shape to play it.
Yeah, I think that it'll be good for, for America and all the other teams with all the stars playing MLB. But I think it'd actually be good for the league too, because some people are kind of tired of 162 games. Mm-hmm. They think it goes too long. And I know the players that aren't on Team USA will be really happy to have some time to rest and kind of get back from injury.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that, because I think that story is going to evolve. Let's move on. Next question.
Okay, yeah. King has a bunch of comments here. He said it was Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell, Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. How'd that work out when he went to the New York Jets after a year's vacation?
Yeah, unbelievable. And Derek has to say, my Vikings are cursed.
They got problems. They're really banged up now. And that's too bad about J.J. McCarthy. And they did not know. They thought it was a minor tweak. They thought, if you go in and it's a minor meniscus, it's 3 to 4 weeks. They went in thinking the worst would be 8. It's a whole year, because evidently the tear was much more severe than they realized. That's tough. But he'll go through a learning curve academically. He'll be in all the meetings and all that. And then as he goes through his rehab, he'll get the opportunity probably the second half of the season just to get back onto the practice field, do walkthroughs, etc. So he'll gain a lot off the field in terms of intellect about being an NFL player. That's a tough blow, because he was pretty dynamic that first game.
Yeah, it was shocking when I heard that news, because I only saw the highlights. I didn't watch the game, but I don't remember him getting sacked or having a really serious injury. So it must have been a weird thing the next day.
Well, he could have gotten hit. His cleats could have caught in the turf. Running around back there, and lots of different ways to tear meniscus or tear cartilage. It's not always from getting blown up in the pocket.
Well, here's another sign that I'm getting old and we're getting old, is you see the B-roll of Kevin O'Connell on the sidelines there for the Vikings, right? And dude looks like he's still 14. Like, he doesn't even shave. How old is he? He's got to be in his 30s, right?
Late 30s, I'm sure.
Yeah. But, I'm really rooting for him. But, boy, he's a young lad still.
Boy, he's got some organizational problems, though. He's got injuries and salary cap issues. That's tough.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Angel. Big Ten, not going to be pretty for UCLA football. I'll be surprised if the Bruins win 4.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. They were insulted. They came back from the Big Ten Media Day, Angel, insulted. They were picked 15th to pick 15th out of the 18 schools in the conference. And the fact that he's come on, he inherits some recruits. He lost a pile. They brought in some in the transfer portal. He's got a quarterback that's hardly ever played at all. Now, if there's a strength, maybe they're going to go to single wing football. He's got all these running backs. Maybe they just had to run the damn ball. I just don't know how good it's going to be. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how this works out, because I keep hearing an undercurrent that this might not work out. I'm talking about UCLA going there, maybe getting smoked. And this whole thing, Cal, Stanford going to the Atlantic Coast Conference, that is so far-fetched. There's an undercurrent feeling. Some of these schools in 2 years are going to wake up and say, wrong decision. We'd like to come back and play in whatever the West Coast Conference looks like. And, of course, Oregon State, Washington State will be there. So if you bring back Cal and Stanford, if UCLA says, not for me, if they show up, and then you got San Diego State, Boise, Fresno, whomever they bring in from the Mountain West, now suddenly the conference looks a little bit different, because you got some more credible people in the conference coming back.
There's just so many layers to this, because it's the expense, the time, the jet lag. But imagine if you're a parent of one of these players and you're excited that your kid is playing at UCLA, and suddenly you got to make all these cross-country trips just to go see your kid. So that's brutal. It makes sense for football, but for all the other sports, they should keep it regional. Even the basketball guys prefer it more regional.
But they travel a lot in basketball, so I think they can get used to that. But football's such a different dimension. Like I said, UCLA just not real happy with the way the Big Ten's schedule laid out. They got to travel 23,000 miles for 6 road trips. That's a lot of airtime.
A lot of airtime. Yeah, let's move on here. Actually, Angel had another comment here. He says, had the Nordiques stayed in Quebec, they were going to be changing their logo from the iconic igloo to a wolf.
Well, the problem in Quebec was the devaluation of the Canadian dollar, because Canadian teams have to pay players in American money. That's the NHL bylaw. That and economics are changing. Quebec City, although it's the pride of the province, Quebec City is a smaller market than Montreal. There wasn't the corporate support there. They played in an old arena called the Colisée. It's been since replaced by, I think it's called the Olympic Arena, which is beautiful. It's like 18,000, but they don't have a franchise. Got a junior franchise, the Quebec Remparts, which is very, very successful, very popular. But the economics of that span of time kind of wrecked the franchise, and that's why they had to move. And, the league was moving franchises. The Atlanta Flames became the Calgary Flames. Winnipeg Jets had cash flow problems, money problems, that market. They moved. They became the Arizona Coyotes. And then Winnipeg wound up getting another franchise. So it was just a lot of moving at that point. I happen to think Quebec City now is a vibrant, bigger, different market than it's ever been before. And I think it'd be great for hockey to have it. But NHL didn't go to Quebec City, and they instead moved Arizona to Salt Lake City, and they hope that's going to be a good regional franchise.
Talking about logos here, how about the Hartford Whalers? I mean, isn't that a sweet logo? I mean,
it depends which one you want.
Well, it's the blue and green one with the whale fin, and it looks like an H.
But they also used to have one when I was in the World Hockey Association. I was in Cleveland, and the Whalers had a circular. It was like a lifesaver, life preserver with the roping as the fringe. It was really kind of a cool thing with a harp in the middle of the ring. But it was a very different venue. But they were in Hartford, and then they became the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay, that was my follow-up. I didn't know where they ended up going.
You should drink beer with me. You'd know.
Yeah, your hockey history. But going back to Quebec is still not that big of a city. I think it was only about 300,000.
It's become a much bigger region. Well, you went through Quebec.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it was cool. A lot of really neat history there.
Anybody ever speak English to you?
No. Very little. Okay, moving on. Let's go. Actually, here's an interesting comment from Ray. He says, hey, watching from Republic, Missouri.
All right. Hey, this thing works anywhere.
It's a blowtorch signal, Lee.
From Baja to the Canadian Rockies beyond. Thank you from Missouri. Hope you become a regular and tell a friend.
Okay. And and then Derek a wisecracking. This is the first time I've heard of Hacksaw. Who knew he had to go to San Diego for Nordique's news? Yeah.
We talk hockey all the time. Here's a proviso. I'm going to interject this point because on the right side of our screen, we have all the people that are in Fans Forum. It stretches from here down the hill to the street. How many people want to make remarks, snide comments, ask questions, etc. Everybody who's with us in Fans Forum, when we're done, I want you to email or text everybody in your address book, your Rolodex. Tell them about what we're doing on this podcast. We need to grow this thing at a really quick level. So do us a favor, because we're here Mondays and Thursdays, and we give you a ton of things to talk about and consider and argue with us. When we're done, just make sure you text or email everybody and say, I just found this sports podcast, 1:00 on Monday, 1:00 on Thursday. I don't ask much of you people, but we're going to ask you to do that. Just help us promote this mess that John Riley created.
It's good to have you back, man. Because I listened to you on 690 and 1090, and when you went up to LA, I kind of lost touch, but the fact that you're here on the internet, man, I mean, people are loving it. The numbers are still looking really good.
Technology is unbelievable. And this is coming from, I've told the story. I have my website. I write on it every day. John and I do this unbelievable stuff with podcasts. Then we put stuff up on a YouTube channel during a week. This is coming from a guy who's still got a Royal Manual typewriter. Do you know what a Royal Manual typewriter is? Still has a Royal Manual typewriter in his garage. I bet none of you people have a Royal Manual typewriter, do you?
Well, it's funny. You have all the old school terminology, because when we'll record a podcast, you'll say tape it.
Tape it, yeah, I know.
Okay. And then sometimes when we've had to do Zoom calls, you'll say dial in. It's like you're taking the phone and putting it on the modem like back in the 80s. Okay, here we go. Let's there was a comment here about you, which I think is good. This is from Versa. It says, you should be back on 97.3 from noon to 3. It's the worst sports radio in the history of San Diego sports. You're needed back on the radio here in San Diego. Even though you're doing a hackatua on Roberts, you're still a San Diego legend.
Well, thank you. I thought we had a great run. I still think we could do it, but you got to have somebody that wants to offer you a job and is willing to pay you to do that. The most fascinating thing that it never happened. I wish it had happened. Maybe somewhere down the road it might happen. I mean, I like working with this guy. I've never really done a co-hosted show with the coach, John Quintera, and we've kind of talked off and on. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And we proposed it to some people. and it never got beyond first base because either they didn't want to do it or they didn't want to pay the money or whatever. But John and I would, I think, be pretty good point counterpoint arguing back and forth. Or maybe we'll bring Coach in here. We'll just do a three-way argument.
That's a good vibe, because when we had Coach here, I really enjoyed that, because you guys have kind of similar perspectives on things, and both know so much detail about what's going on with some of these teams. I mean, that would be like a sports media, sports data lesson. It'd be like a lecture from the two of you, as opposed to some sort of interactive thing, because you're so knowledgeable.
I told Coach we'd get him back on as a co-host here. We'll try to wedge it back into the schedule.
We should do that. And I want to get more of the fans involved too.
Okay, next question. Thank you for the compliment.
Okay, let's go here to the Chargers comment from Aaron. He goes, Bosa is the Anthony Rondon of baseball. Could be a great player, but always hurt.
Yeah, he gets dinged. He plays hard, but he's always hurt. Now he's hurt again. He's got a wrist injury. They're not talking about it. Hopefully he'll be ready for opening day. But the question is, can he play a 17-game schedule? Because he's not played a 17-game schedule. But he's had all types of things. I mean, he's had knee injuries, and he's had calf injuries, and it's such an explosive position that he plays, and such a physical position too. So it's too bad. This might be his last season because he's got a massive salary cap number this year and even more next year. And you can only restructure down the contracts so many times, and then the bill comes due. It's like the wife's credit card. So, somebody may be leaving at the end of the year. It might be Mack, or it might be Bosa. It might be both. So we'll have to see if he can stay on the field this season. He's a good player. Got the wrong Bosa, though. Nick Bosa is the better player.
Yeah, I mean, he's been terrific. Now, how long Joey Bosa has been in the league for, maybe 6-7 years?
Yeah.
Because he was here in San Diego. But Khalil Mack is an interesting guy, because he came from Buffalo?
Chicago. He's moved all over the place.
But wasn't he from the University of Buffalo?
Yes, he was a small college guy who was a late bloomer who became a real star. But he was a Chicago Bear. Then he was with the Raiders. But he's moved around the dial a lot.
But he's getting up there. He's older than Bosa, right?
Yeah, he's 33, maybe going on 34.
Yeah.
Might be his last year, maybe this year, next year, but his cap figure is monstrous too.
Well, he's got a career. He deserves what he's earning.
He's a pretty good football player.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, we move on. A couple more here before we go to social media.
Yeah, we are in social media right now, Lee. So let's talk here about Dodgers. This is from Rutardo. He says, if Dave Robertson won a legitimate World Series, he would be entitled to an off year. However, the Dodgers have had the best team in baseball for a dozen years, and year after year, he chokes. He crumbles in the playoffs. A team with that much talent is built to win, not crumble under pressure. Dave Roberts must go.
A lot of people feel that way, but please understand it. And I'm not defending Dave Roberts across the board entirely, but the people in the analytics department, they give him a piece of paper every game and say, this is what we recommend you do. First man up in the bullpen, first guy off the bench pinch hitting. These are the metrics as it relates to left-handed versus right-handed. So he plays off a script all the time. So it's not all his decisions. That being said, you can screech this year, but pal, they've had 18 pitchers on the disabled list this season. 18, and they're still in first place. And they got a large chunk of the season with no Mookie Betts and nothing from Max Muncy, and they're still in first place. I think the most intangible thing that Dave Roberts does, John, is manage the personalities in the clubhouse. And there's a lot of guys making a lot of money, and there could be a lot of potential issues there. They've never had clubhouse issues there as compared to what happened down at Petco Park a couple of years in a row with Soto and Machado and who's here, who's
Bob Melvin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Dave Roberts has done a pretty good job there. I don't know that he's in jeopardy. He's got another year to go on this contract, and we'll see. But for them to be in first place despite all the trauma with all the injuries, that to me is really impressive.
Kind of makes me think of your old colleague, Jim Rome, just, scoreboard, first place. I mean, you can't argue with that. I saw this clip that Dave Roberts came out of the dugout, went to the mound, looked like he was going to maybe change the pitcher, but he didn't. He talked to them and found out that the runner didn't touch second base properly.
That came from Clayton Kershaw in the dugout.
Is that where it came from?
Kershaw yelled out there he did not go back and retouch second base in the game last night.
Yes.
The guy got called out. Chris Dodgers wound up losing the game at the end.
It's good baseball IQ.
Yes, paying attention to detail.
Yeah, so Kershaw, he was the one that spotted it. But Dave Roberts is just a good dude, and I the story that I have about him is that my son was playing baseball. We were over at what's the school out in Rancho Santa Fe? It's like a Christian school, and they were playing Poway High in a preseason game. And I was in the stands with the fans, or with the parents, and all of a sudden I heard a voice. It sounded kind of familiar, and I turned over like 3 seats down. It was Dave Roberts was there because his kid played for Santa Fe Christian. That was the school. But is he still like he doesn't live in San Diego anymore, but he's got a lot of connections here.
Oh yeah, very much so. He played here, and his family was here, and he came from a military family. He's a really special human being. A lot of people don't know he's a cancer survivor.
Nice.
And
wow.
He came up and he grabbed me on the arm one day at Petco Park. I was walking, I don't know, from the dugout to somewhere else, and he grabbed me and said, "I want to tell you something about your talk show." And I thought, oh,
here we go.
Yeah, here we go. I'm going to get it now. He said, "I want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I was told that while I was having these cancer treatments, you did a commentary about us all being the same, not a ball player, not a talk show host, whomever. And you said people should pray for Dave Roberts."
Yeah.
And that was really cool.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was going to be crap about the fact, why'd you get picked off first base?
Well, someone's always got something to say to you, right? Either
Nice
good
man,
or
though.
bad.
Nice person.
Yeah, he's always struck me as a good dude. And why did the Padres not interview him for a manager position here? Does that seem like a blown call there?
Please address your memo to AJ Preller.
Okay.
It's why they fire a good guy like Bud Black. Please address that memo to AJ Preller.
Okay, I got to get your typewriter and I can bang it out. Bang out
Hey,
that memo.
thank you for the question. Go ahead, next one.
Next one. Okay, let's talk here about the Raiders. And this is from Dave. And he says, "Sorry to disappoint, Lee, but White is going to make you forget all about Josh Jacobs, who I cheered for and wanted to stay with us. But White looked great at the end of the year with a bunch of 10-yard clips every time he carried the ball."
Okay, he's talking about a second-year running back from Georgia, I believe, Zamir White. Big physical specimen. He's got to prove he can do it. I mean, do it on a consistent basis. It's one of the question marks with the Raiders. Question one is obviously who's the quarterback. Question two, you lost a lot of heavy-duty yardage that Josh Jacobs got you. Question three, do you really have a good offensive line to help Colton Miller, the left tackle? They think they do. Only time's going to tell. And then the fourth question, can Zamir White be the replacement and do all the things Josh Jacobs did? Because Jacobs is really, really productive, and his mailing address is now up with the Green Bay Packers. So that's that side of the ball. To me, they got a lot of question marks. Defensively, and John and I talked about this about a week ago, the addition of Christian Wilkins, who came from Miami, defensive tackle, he is huge because now you got a stud who makes things happen. I mean, he is as active a defensive tackle as I think modern-day football has seen. And now you got Max Crosby on one side, got another guy doesn't have a sexy name, but plays really well and is very active. His name is Mal Kuntz. He's on the other side. I love their linebackers, led by Diablo, their inside linebacker, and they've added a linebacking core, Robert Spillane. I got questions about do they have enough in the secondary. I do think the Raider front seven defensively is going to be better, so that's an upgrade. But can they answer all the question marks that I have on the offensive side of the football? So, no, you're correct. Zamir White at the end last year, but got a 17-game schedule ahead of us. Can he be that guy?
I'm anxious to see how this Raider thing goes.
Yeah.
And the Chargers, too. We just don't know understand what it's going to all end up being. But you were talking about the defense, and you're confident in the Raiders. Are they running a 3-4 or a 4-3?
They've flipped it back to a 4-3.
Okay.
And they're going to, they got two defensive tackles and they got the two edge guys. The edge guys are really dynamic. Hey, last year's number one draft pick had hardly played. He was hurt. He's a defensive end. He was to me, he was a surprise pick. They bypassed some other guys. I'll just be intrigued to see if the young guys can now take the next step up. But I'll tell you, Christian Wilkins is unbelievably active for a big man. I was stunned Miami didn't pay him the price and let him walk.
Wow. I mean, it's great. The NFL is great when the Raiders are relevant because they become like the Yankees in baseball, the Death Star, the dark side.
Used to be,
but
yep.
they still will play that up. It's all part of the brand.
You're not a Raider fan, going to run down the hallway and get the Super Bowl trophy. It's dusty and dented and bring it out and say, see? Yeah, well, it's 1975, pal. See?
Well, yeah. I mean, that again, I was a Niners Raiders guy growing up. And then loved the Chargers when they were in San Diego. And then when the Chargers moved to LA, I was like, I'm going to go root for my Raiders again. And that's kind of where I am.
So, it's interesting. I mean, we all know Mahomes and all of his buddies, Travis Swift's boyfriend and all that in Kansas City and all the storylines. Then you got the Chargers. Can they keep the quarterback healthy? who's going to be the running back to replace the all-purpose greatness? Do they have any wide receivers? So that's the Charger question. I just ran through the Raider question. And the whole Denver storyline is second year Sean Payton, now that it's his team, his roster, going to do well. And by the way, speaking of the Broncos, sidebar comment, Bo Nix is going to start at quarterback this weekend.
Ha. So you go from number 3 to number 1.
Yeah, he went 16 for 21, his first game coming off the bench, and now he's going to be the starter. So there's so many unique questions that we want to pay attention to, aside from the Swifties and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, teams 2, 3, and 4 in the division. Fascinating couple of weeks going towards opening day. And by the way, when we get to Labor Day weekend, we are going to do an NFL preview. We're going to go division by division. That will tell you when that is going to occur. Let's do one more here.
Okay, we'll get one more social media in, and let's go here, talk a little MLB regular season with Bert. He says the regular season is meaningless. It's who's the hottest team going into the playoffs, and that is who usually does best. 2 or so great starting pitchers will take a team far. That's what's important in my opinion. Not sure either team, he's talking about the Padres or Dodgers, has that with their current roster. Maybe if some of the pitchers on the IL make it back.
Are you hot? Are you healthy? Those are 2 most important things when we get to the first weekend of October. Now, please understand this, and I say this as it relates to the Dodgers, and I say this as it relates to the Padres, for example. Your starting pitching may be well in slots, but pal, when you get to postseason, you're playing really good teams. If you get to the second round, you're playing really tougher teams. So you better have depth. You better have starting pitching, and if you got to go to the pen early, then you better have a lot of numbers in the bullpen, because you're going to be calling on these guys to snuff out rallies. Why? Because once you get to the second and third round, you're playing really good batting orders. I'm sorry, there's no Marlins, Pirates, or Rockies in postseason play. So that's why it's really important. If the Dodgers can be healthy, get all their pitchers back to whom they used to be, they're going to be a force. And for the Padres, they got the best bullpen in baseball, the deepest bullpen in baseball right now. They got 7 deep that I think you can trust, whether you need to go to them the 5th inning or the 8th inning or setups to get to Robert Suarez. But the playoffs, it's such a different animal because, like I say, you're not playing the Marlins, Pirates, Rockies, or White Sox in postseason.
But, you know, the Padres have great starting pitching. I mean, I saw power rankings for the MLB best pitchers, top 10, and the Padres had 2 of them with Cease and King.
Yes.
So that Soto trade is actually working out not so bad. The Dodgers are the team to worry about. You just don't know what they're going to get with all those players. Hey, before we wrap this up, though, John was commenting. He goes like, hey, how come we weren't talking about Kaepernick? And, you know, he's right. I was scrolling through all of these comments so fast that I missed a few. But let's just at least get John in here because we want to talk a little bit about Kaepernick. Add on. Here we go. He says, is Harbaugh trying to charter himself already? Kaepernick will chase off a few fans that Dean has.
Well, I gave a different presentation. You know, if Kaepernick wants to get into coaching, and he's a smart dude, I happen to think he's a good guy. If he wants to get into coaching, what better way than the guy you used to play for, who's quite a bright light intellectually with football. But, you know, he made the comment yesterday that he really still thinks he'd like to play or try to play at age 36, age 37. Right place, right time, right guy. Chargers have a desperate need for a backup quarterback. And, you know, you got 3 weeks to get Harbaugh ready from cardiovascular point to be able to run and do what he needs to do. And he's a smart guy, and he knows the playbook or a piece of the playbook because he played for Harbaugh. It kind of makes sense to me. I guess I'm setting aside all the fans' reaction because first thing out of your mouth will be something toxic from somebody that look what he did and what does he represent with a flag, etc. But like I said, I went and learned a lot more about Kaepernick, the person, when he was away from football and what he did charity-wise, what he's still doing charity-wise. It kind of changed my view of what Kaepernick did against the fans that one day with the flag. So I'd take a gamble. I don't know if Harbaugh's willing to take a gamble. Is it too late in the game for him to look at a different quarterback who's been out of football? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm throwing spitballs against the wall that are not going to stick. I don't know. John, your turn.
I just wish people would kind of get over it, you know, because, you know, a lot of times the people that are all like fired up about America and they're offended that someone knelt during the national anthem, usually these people are pretty Christian, you know, and so it's like, forgive, you know, let's give this guy a second chance. Let's give him a chance to come back and redeem himself. If not as a quarterback, why not as a counselor, consultant, or even as a coach? because he still has something to offer.
I think he does. And the other factor in the equation, we'll go through NFL rosters. I see a lot of troubled guys who've been in real serious trouble.
Exactly.
That have been given 7 second chances. Guys coming off suspensions, guys coming out of rehabs, guys who lost their jobs because of domestic abuse. And there's a bunch of those dudes still playing in the NFL now after they, quote, serve their sentence. Well, his sentence has gone 7 years. Is it because he's toxic? Is it because of what he did with the flag? Or is it because he was coming off shoulder surgery and a lot of people don't think that maybe he can play any longer? Or is it because he has to be in a specialized offense to do what he does? I thought if he had gone to Baltimore to be the backup to Lamar Jackson, that's his offense, run and throw. But it didn't get done. Of course, that was 4 years ago. And at that point, he was still younger and he thought, I want big money. I want starter salary. Well, now he's a backup unemployed. He'd have to come in for the minimum because the Chargers have salary cap problems. So maybe you give him a look, but maybe it's too late in the offseason. Maybe this conversation probably should have occurred in February after Harbaugh got hired, because then they would have had all this time to get him in the building, get him acclimated to the physicality of the NFL, because he's been out of it for so long, and they could have taught him the playbook back then. This might be a little bit late in the game now.
Has there ever been an NFL player that's taken like 7 years off and then come back?
Not that I know. The guys who took a year off that came back and weren't never the same player again.
Exactly. And they wouldn't be in football shape, because they'd just been like regular people like us, and so I can't see any scenario where he plays, although it's fun to think about. But as a counselor consultant, yeah, why not? I mean, the Chargers need some help with their backup quarterback.
And with their learning curve. Let him learn about what it's like to be a coach, because I think he's really intellectual. He went to Nevada, Reno, and he graduated. And my whole attitude about him changed the more research I did about what he did for charities and foundations and what he's still doing today, even though he's been out of football for a long period of time. So we'll see where it goes. I guess if I set my heart aside and start thinking in my head, hey, dummy, it's the middle of August. You can't bring somebody out of 7 years retirement, get him NFL ready, and get him into the playbook in such a short period of time. So we'll see if this is more about coaching than or is his heart wanting to play again.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed what we try to bring you every Monday, every Thursday. Now, as part of the agreement, you watch this podcast on live stream, you did agree to text and email and tell all your friends about what we're doing. We want you to bring your friends to this podcast when we come back Monday. We're on Mondays at 1, Thursdays at 1 o'clock too. Our podcast brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers. 9 locations to serve you, and the new one that's opening up in Orange County at Dana Point. You got projects, they've got materials, you want ideas. These are the people to deal with. Dixieline Lumber. John, have yourself a great sports weekend. You got left-hand pennant race, right-hand NFL preseason games. We got a lot to pay attention to.
We do. It's the dog days of summer, but it's still great sports.
We will see you on Monday. We'll see you on Monday. Thanks for being with us. As always, great to have you part of our team on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps. For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.